Hey there, it's Tricia with Easy Emini Trade, and I want to go over the setups from the room for Monday, October 1st through October 4th, Thursday, and those are the days and hours that we have the room. So anything outside of that, anyway, you'll get the idea. So if you have any questions, you can always send me an email. If you'd like more info on the setups, you can go to www.easyemintrade.com. Okay, so everything that I'm going to show you is on the NQ. That's what we spend majority of the time in the room trading. I love it. It moves really nicely. It's really easy to get targets, unlike the ES, which can tend to be range bound. Great place for someone to start is the NQ, and great place to continue with your trading career on the NQ. I like the Russell. I like CL. We're probably going to start transitioning into natural gas as well. So lots of great things out there to trade other than the ES. And I'm not saying you shouldn't trade the ES, but I would just suggest giving something else a try, and you might be pleasantly surprised. Okay, so let's start out with the opening range trade for Monday the 1st. So I've got the 5-minute chart up here, and for me, the round number of 2,800 being right below where we've got this open range low, which is 350, so it would have us getting in at 325. To me, it's just too close to 2,800, so it's a pass for me. But it does work out for at least 2 points, so I'm glad to see it, but it was one that I passed on. Also, for the opening range trade, I would definitely suggest having, for your plan, a minimum range requirement. So for example, if that opening range is smaller than 4.5 points, I pass on it, because my concern is that it's going to trigger me in one direction, then come right back down and stop me out in the other. So that's a risk that you take when the range is very small. A lot of times people will take it in the opposite direction as well. So like here, where the 5-minute opening range breaks in the upside, they take that as well. That has a high percentage of working out too. So you can just see what you're willing to do. Alrighty, so on our entry chart here, I don't do anything right off the open, so nothing for me to do here in the first couple minutes, because I like the price to figure out what it wants to do in the way of a direction, and then I'll look to take something. The exception of that is the Three Amigos, but I still won't do that in the first few minutes of the open. We do have news at 10 on the 1st, so we do get a Three Amigos setting up here at 9:54, but it's a pass for me because news is at 10 o'clock. For me, I use 15 minutes before an item that can tend to move the market, and you can check that out on any economic calendar that you can count on. I like Forex Factory because it gives you all the markets. So if you're trading pre-market and you're going to trade the 6E, for example, you want to be aware of what's going on in the European economic calendar as well. So Forex Factory covers it all. Here, I'm going to just show you this. You get the Kaboom set up right here at 9:36, and everything's in line for it. And I'm just going to put an arrow here so you can see it. But for me, I wouldn't be interested in that because I would be looking here to the left, this area here that price held, and I didn't draw my line very well, but I would determine if there was enough room to that area or not for me to get my target. If you determine the answer is yes, and you get in like at 775, excuse me, what was the low there? Let me see, looks like 725. So you get in at 7 or 675, and you've got this area of, let's say 450 below you. If you're willing to give it a shot, you go right ahead. What I would do is I wouldn't use that exact area. I would use a little bit higher than that area in the event that it can't get there. So if you determine there's enough room, everything is in line to take that. So again, you have to decide if there is enough room or not for you to get your first target. Okay, everything's good. We're under the moving average from the broader view. It's coloring for the slope lower for a short. So is our moving average on our entry chart. So it's good to go. As I said here, you get the 3 Amigo at 9.54. It's too close to news, so nothing to really do there. Even if there wasn't news, I would pass on this just because of 2800 being literally right below me. Now, the 3 Amigo, I generally, on the NQ, don't worry too much about support or resistance. However, 2800 or any round number I'm going to stay away from, so 2800, 2700, 2600. But let's say that there wasn't news and it was just the pivot point there below me. I would definitely be willing to give it a shot. The other time that I do pay attention to support or resistance occasionally is if there's an area that keeps holding. So it keeps holding and holding and holding, and I may decide that I don't want to take the risk. I'll let price break through and then see if I get an entry. Okay. Here, this is still around news, but you do get closed outside the channel. But the ADX is already above 20 here. One thing I want to point out for the counter channel setup, you're going to find that the setup works best when the ADX is under the DMIs and then it starts to rise above 20. So it's under here, like for example, you can see it's under the DMIs and then it starts to rise above 20. Here we get a counter channel setup at 1026, and it's against the trend, but what's nice about this is even though it's against the trend, we've got the Fibonacci 50% area literally right below us, which we can use as a target area. So you can opt to take this against the trend because to me it makes perfect sense. It's likely to find its way down here to the 50% area. If you look to the left on this move higher, price did not create a new area of support or resistance. So as easily as this moved higher, this you would expect to be able to move in the same fashion. So straight up, so you're hoping straight down. And unfortunately on this move higher, we never get a pullback entry opportunity. So that's just how it is. Sometimes on news, things take off and then you don't get an opportunity to get in on the action. It's just how it is sometimes. And the reason I choose not to trade around news is not because I'm afraid I'm going to get stopped out, but because I don't want to have major slippage on news. So if my stop gets hit and price is moving really quickly on one of the announcements, you let's say are using a 3-point stop, you can have slippage and that 3-point stop turns into a 4-point or 4.5 point loser. So it's hard to have predetermined risk, in my opinion, when you're trading around the news. So if you're in long and it shoots higher, then great. But if you're in long and it goes the opposite way, then unfortunately you just have to deal with the consequences. So here we get closed outside the channel. You can see the white here. We're above 20 here, and actually get rid of that arrow. There we go. And you get in for the counter channel, and away you go. So it works at least for the 2-point target. Right next to that, at 11:14, we do get a 3 Amigo, and it never triggers. And what I mean by never triggers is we get our signal to place our order. So I put a buy stop. Let me just make this a little bigger here. There we go. That might be a little easier to see here. There we go. So we get the signal to take it, put a buy stop above this bar, and it never triggers, meaning the next bar never came up to trigger my buy. So for me, that's a cancel. I don't get in late on those. Some people will opt to get in late, meaning as long as the 3 ADXs remain green and heading higher on our indicator, then they will then move their buy stop above this bar here and then above the next bar here. I just would be very careful about taking those late entries in support or resistance areas. Okay? So here we get a kaboom setup. You can see the indicator crosses below 0 right here, but we're literally on the 50% retracement area. So I'm not interested in taking a short right above that area, so that's a pass. Here you get the indicator crossing above 0, but the histogram actually is not green until like the 3rd bar. So there's nothing really to do there. And even if there was, if you look to the left, I would just look at this area that that held here and assume that as the target area, and you would determine that there's not enough room to take it. here at 11:52. Now I'm not going to go over these because it's during lunch and I'm going to run out of time if I want to try and squeeze 4 days in here. But you get a couple Keltner channel setups that work out fine. If you're going to trade during the doldrums, I would just urge you to make sure that there's enough volume to trade, because the risk that you run during lunchtime is that you could be sitting in a trade forever waiting for it to work out, and it just doesn't. Or you can be sitting in a trade forever and it does work out, but you have to decide how long you're willing to wait. So I don't trade at all during the break. And if you have a quiet morning with not a whole lot of price direction, a lot of times during the doldrums you can get a movement. So you just have to make the decision what you're willing to do. So I'm not willing to trade during the break, so that's my choice. So I'm not going to go over any of these, but nonetheless you get a Keltner channel here, Keltner channel here, Keltner channel here at 12:49. You get one here at 1:10. And then we get, let me just scroll here fast. Here we go. Then we get an Amigo set up here at 1:40 for a short, but unfortunately it was way too fast to get in. Meaning we get the signal, we go to place a sell stop, and literally like 5 or 6 bars have already gone by. So that happens occasionally. It doesn't happen often, but that's the breaks. So nothing to really do there. Here at 1:50, we get closed outside the Keltner channel. Everything's in line to take it, but if you look to the left, you can see that you've got this area of support and resistance, which has been holding, and that's at 93.50. So if you take this as a Keltner channel setup, you just have to be aware that might hold. So for me, I would wait to get through it and then look to see if there's an entry. So you get through it, you can decide to take it as a pullback or wait for another Amigo or a kaboom or a pullback even. So nothing to really do. You do get a pullback right here to the Keltner channel, and I prefer a pullback to the 9 weighted on the entry chart, but you can decide for yourself what you're willing to do there. Then let's see what we got here. We're back up into 2800 area, and the pivot point, nothing really for me to do into that area. Here at 310, we do get a Keltner channel continuation setup. And one thing I do want to point out too is if you're going sideways, like we are here, and the ADX is under the DMIs, just use caution when you take the kaboom setup. Make sure that you've got room up to resistance or down to support if you're going to take a kaboom setup when the ADX is just basically flatlining under the DMIs. Okay? So at 310 we get a Keltner channel continuation setup in the area of the previous day's close. This orange line is the previous day's low. So you can take it here at 310 and hope that it gets through the close and use the previous day's low as your target, or you can wait for it to get through this area and then see if you get an opportunity. So you either take it here at 310 or you take it here at 319 as a pullback. Price pulls back to our moving average here, the 30 weighted, and you get in under this bar here, and away it goes. If for some reason you didn't get in under that bar at 319, then you do get another pullback opportunity here at 324. And I'm not going to go into anything after 330 because I don't trade after 330, but I'm just trying to give you guys the gist of the setups over and over again. So hopefully you'll gain some confidence and familiarity in taking them. Okay, so Tuesday the 2nd. For that opening range trade, the range is very large. It's going to require more than a 10-point stop, so I'm not interested in it. It's a little too large for me. Again, you'll have to make the determination on your own, but it doesn't change the fact that the probability of it working out is still very high. We use the Fibonacci price projection tool. And if you have a large opening range, then your targets will be larger as well. So again, you have to make that determination. It sets up for a short and it works out. It was a pass for me just because it was too large. Here, I don't do anything ever right off the open. I let price figure out what it wants to do before I'm willing to take something. We don't have any news on Tuesday, so we just let price figure out which direction it wants to go, and then we look for a setup. So you can see it starts out higher here, but there's no real setup. We do get outside the channel, but it's too early. It's like at 9:31, so I'm not willing to do anything with that. We do get outside the channel here, but the ADX is already above 20, so I'm not interested in it. Had it come below and then started higher, you might be interested in it, but keep in mind it's right in that 2800 area. And unfortunately, we spent a lot of time there last week. So, decide what your rules will require for you in your personal trading plan. And when we do find ourselves going sideways, you're going to find that the moving average from the broader view, which is this one that kind of looks stair-steppy, it's hard to see here because everything's on top of each other. But for a buy for the Kaboom setup, I want to be above that. For a short, I want to be below it, and I like to have it coloring for the slope that I'm looking to take it. So, that reddish color for lower, green for higher. And if price is going sideways, you're going to find that that moving average will generally run right in the middle of price. So if you see that you're going sideways, you could opt to be a little more aggressive and not care about what side of that moving average you're on when you take a trade. So once again, you can be as aggressive or conservative as you want to be with the setups. Here we get I'm going to just scrunch this up a little bit so you'll be able to see it, what I want to show you. We do get a counter channel continuation setup. Everything's in line to take it, but we've got this area of support here at 93.50, which has been holding and holding. So you may opt to pass on that because of that, or you can take it and use the area of the close of the previous day as your target area. So again, the worst case scenario is that it can't break through this area and it tries and it fails and it stops you out, or it works out and it finds its way down to the previous day's close, which is that yellow line. And nothing to do with the Kaboom setup. And you'll find that when price is stuck in an area generally and you're just kind of range bound and going sideways, you're not going to get a whole lot of the Kaboom setups. Here we get everything we need to take the counter channel setup at 10:31, and we take it and it just doesn't go anywhere. So basically I got out with like 2 ticks. Basically to me that's break even. It just wasn't going, so when I got an opportunity to get out with a little something, instead of letting it turn into a loser, I took it. So definitely the right choice. Here at 10:52 we do get a 3 Amigos setting up. Let me just move this over here. So 10:52 we get a 3 Amigos setting up, again in the 2800 area. And unfortunately we've had a lot of time in that area, as I said last week, so it works out fine. You just have to decide what you're going to do in that area. So it works out fine. Here, where I've got this arrow, this is 11:23. You do get a Kaboom setup, but you would definitely want to look to your left, and you'll see this area that it previously held. And use, what I do is if there's an area that I'm using as a guide where I'm expecting price to get to, I don't use that exact area. I'll use like half a point above that. So if you take this as a Kaboom setup, you would just decide if there's enough room for you to take it or not, and or if it's too close to the doldrums. So it works out for 2 nonetheless. And like I said, I'm not going to go over anything from lunch because I'll run out of time here as I'm recording, so I'm just going to skip ahead. And one thing I do want to point out, though, is if you are going to trade during the doldrums, I mentioned make sure you have enough volume, but also like here at 12:34, we do get a 3 Amigo setting up, but when we get our signal, you put your sell stop under this bar where this purple line is, and you're sitting there waiting for your order to trigger, waiting for it to trigger. And actually this bar took, let's see, took quite a while to close. And while you're waiting for it to close and trigger your order on the next bar, the ADXs on our 3 Amigo indicator go back to red. At least one of them does. So that's a cancel for the trade. So if it hadn't triggered and the indicator goes back to red for the Amigos, cancel your order. Okay? So that's what happened here at 12:34. That's what happened here at 12:45. Here you just get a no trigger. You have a buy stop above that bar, and the next bar never trades up to trigger you. Here you wind up with a no trigger as well. So you might think, well, you know, what good is that? It's not getting me in these trades. That's the idea. Price is going sideways here, so it's basically keeping you out of trouble. So it saved you from a stop out here, saved you from a stop out here, saved you from a stop out here, and this one you wouldn't have been stopped out, I don't think, but you get the point. Okay, so 155 we get 3 Amigo setting up right here. Works out great. Then we wind up going sideways for a while. Then at 225 we get a 3 Amigo setting up here. It's a no trigger, so for me that's a cancel. The next bar, it doesn't trigger my entry, so for me I don't take the trade. If it doesn't trigger my entry on the very next bar, I pass. You can decide to get in late, provided that the 3 ADXs remain green, but for me, like I said, it's a pass. Now, with that said, we do manage to get a counter channel set up at 227, which gets us in under the low of the previous day. So you still have an opportunity to get in, even though we had a no trigger here on the Amigo. Then we get a setup here at, let me see, we get a 3 Amigo right here at 316, where this white line is, and away we go. If for some reason you didn't take that, you do get a counter channel set up right here at 318, where everything's in line to take it. However, on that, you would definitely be looking here to this area here where we've got this blue line drawn, because price had held it as support and resistance at 83.25. So you would just be aware of that area above you, and you're in and you're expecting price to hold there, and it keeps going. Okay, I'm not going to go over anything after 3:30 because, like I said, I don't have a lot of time on this recording. So let's move on to Wednesday. So here is Wednesday the 3rd. The opening range trade. We got the low at 2,875, the high at 2,600. Now I'm not going to take the short because of the round number area, and I'm not trying to beat it to death, but I'm not going to do anything no matter what the setup is in that area unless I have something giving me room to that area. So this would have us taking a short at 2,850 or 25, and I'm not interested. Even though it works, I'm not interested. As I mentioned earlier, some people will take the second direction when it sets up, so anybody who tried to take it in the second direction, it would have failed. I don't take the second direction, I only take the first direction. So, but the second direction still does have a high probability of working out. On our regular setups, again, nothing to do right off the open. We do have news at 10. So I need something to happen here pretty quickly by 9:45, otherwise I have to sit on my hands. We do get a counter channel set up here at 9:39, but unfortunately we're still stuck in that bugger of an area, 2,800. So not interested, even though it works, not interested. Here at 9:56 we get a 3 Amigo setting up. We've got news at 10, so if you don't trade around news, you would pass on that. Even if you were willing to take it, it would have been a no trigger. Your next bar would have never triggered your entry, so that would be a cancel if you were willing to take it. We do get a counter channel here, but it's right at 10 o'clock. So again, we've got news, so you have to again decide what you're willing to do. Here we do wind up with a counter channel setup right, let me just mark it here at 10:02, and it's under the close area from yesterday. So you can opt to take that, just knowing full well that it might turn into a failed breakdown attempt because it's right in the area of the close. It works out fine, finds its way down to the floor trade or pivot point, but you just make educated choices. You know going in that you're taking it right under the close from the previous day, and you know if it turns into a failed breakdown attempt, you get stopped out. And like I said, because of how price has been going and hanging out in the same areas day after day after day, it makes it difficult to take the kaboom setup because everywhere you look you've got support and resistance. But you know that's just how it is. Our environments change all the time. So you know there was a period where we wound up not with very many Amigo setups, and we wound up with a lot of kaboom setups. So the idea of having a handful of setups that you're willing to trade, it basically is going to give you something for every type of market condition that we wind up finding ourselves in. Another counter channel setup here, we've got 2800. Again, your choice what you're going to do there. Works out, finds its way up to the high of the previous day, which is this green line right here. So it works out okay. Here, I pass on this Amigo right here at 1041, as I did here at the one at 1014 because of the 2800. So here, you get one that works and you get one that doesn't. If you tried this one, you would have been stopped out. So that's the thing. This, of course, was a counter channel. This was an Amigo at 1041. And generally, we don't pass on the Amigos in any areas but those round number areas. Counter channel set up at 1105. We use the high area of the previous day as our target area, and then you're pleasantly surprised when it busts through. So it's always nice when it does better than you expect. If you're just trading one or two contracts, just shoot for the first target. Don't try to hold on to it hoping for a runner, because you know, quite honestly, you wind up on the setups that you take, you wind up with fewer runners than you do at least banking, you know, at least the first target. If you look at the daily chart and price is consolidating, it's just lots of back and forth sideways, that's the type of environment that creates a lot of support and resistance, and those are the days that you're less likely to have much in the way of price runners. So if that helps, you know, you to make a decision whether to take the first target or exit in stages. Again, I still tend to, depending on what's around me, I'll take 2/3 of my position off at 2 points. My stop automatically gets moved to a tick better than my entry, and then I've got a third to hold on to. But if I'm taking a trade right into resistance like this, my target's at the first target, 2 points, and I'm not going to hope to bust through this area. So, you know, you just never know what's going to happen. So, you know, getting that first target, at least you've got some profit. And again, I'm not going to go through anything that's set up during lunch. Just make sure you've got enough volume. Here at just about 1:32, right after we get back from lunch, we get a 3 Amigo set up, and I accidentally got in because I had put my sell stop under this bar right here where I've got this white line, and the next bar doesn't trigger it, but I don't get my order canceled fast enough, and it gets triggered on the very next bar, so on this third bar. So I'm in, so you can opt to see what happens and see if it works out, or because it didn't fit your plan and your criteria, just get out in spite of the fact that I got in accidentally. You know, once in a while you get lucky, and it, you know, in this case it works out. We do get a counter channel set up right here immediately following it at 1:35, and you would use the high from the previous day as your target area, and again it just keeps going. So then the option is, if price is going, then you can look for a pullback entry, and we really don't get one. We get a pullback here to the counter channel, but it would have us taking a short right in the area of the 50% retracement. So not really anything really interesting to do. You can see for the kaboom setup, crosses below zero, but it's right at that 50%. So I'm not going to take a kaboom setup with support right below me. So nothing to really do here. Here we get a 3 Amigo setup at 224, doesn't trigger. So that's a cancel for me. And here we get at 254, we get an Amigo setup, excuse me, a MACD setup, the kaboom, and everything's in line to take it, but once again, you are right above support. So if you want to use this area here to your left that last held and give it a shot and hope that you get through the 50% area, it does work out, but it just as easily could get stuck. So always just look to the left at the last areas that held. And then if you determine that there's enough space, you take it. Here we get a MACD setup, the kaboom right there at 314. And it doesn't look like price is above the moving average from the broader view, but we actually are at the time it sets up. Keep in mind that the moving average will keep moving. It's not on this chart. It's just overlaid on this chart. So at the time we get the setup, everything is in line to take it, and you would use the high from Tuesday as your target area. So there's enough room to take it. You know, at least in my opinion, there's enough room to take it. Okay, and then the rest is after 3:30, so not interested. And Thursday, the 4th. Here's the opening range trade. The range is too small for me. Remember earlier I said I want at least a 4.5 point minimum requirement. I don't have it here, so I'm not interested in it. Even though it triggers for a short and it works out, I'm still not interested in it. And then later it triggers for a buy. I'm not interested in the second direction anyway. So again, some people use 5 points as their minimum requirement. Some don't have a requirement. You know, just do some experimenting with it, because you can easily go back and mark them all. And, you know, it's not a setup that's going to be right for everybody, because it does require a big stop, but it also will allow you to shoot for larger targets. The issue, as I've mentioned in past videos with the opening range trade, is once in, managing it the best way. That's the hardest part. So definitely a lot of room for improvement on managing that on my end. What I tend to do is you know, even though this wasn't a day that I took it, what I tend to do is once it gets to the point of 2 points from my entry, I'll move the stop to that 2 point area. So worst case scenario, I wind up with 2 points. If it retraces, best case, I'm still in if it keeps going. Because I just, in my, for me, I just can't bring myself to sit there with such a large stop for very long. So again, that's how I do it. You can see if you can find something better. Okay, so we get a counter channel set up here at 9:35. We've got the previous day's close below us, so that would be the target area. We do have news at 10, so we need to be aware of that, so we're in. Then we get counter channel set up here at 9:49. You've got the high from the previous day right above you, and we've got news at 10, so that's a pass for me. And if you decide to take it, you just have to be aware that the high from the previous day is right there. We get a 3 Amigo here, literally right at 10:01. I'm not interested. It's too close to that 10 o'clock news that just came out. What I tend to do is just give it a couple minutes afterwards and you know, then go from there. We do get a counter channel set up here, but we're going sideways. And we know resistance is above us, so you can certainly give it a shot. Everything's in line to take it, but you know that you've got resistance above you. So if you want to give it a shot, you might get stuck there, or you might break through as it did there. So once through, then I have to find a way to get in, which would have to be a pullback. And I never really get a pullback opportunity here. I prefer it to pull back to the moving average on the entry chart rather than just to the channel. But if you opt for it to pull back just to the counter channel, you can still use the small moving averages as confirmation. So it would have you basically getting in, you know, here. So again, based on your trading plan. We get a 3 Amigo here at 10:28. Doesn't trigger, so nothing to do. Here we get a short, doesn't trigger, so nothing to do. Here at 11:05, we actually get an Amigo set up, but it was too fast. So literally, you know, this bar closes at 11:05:03 as the time, and we literally get, you know, basically 5 or 6 bars in a matter of seconds. So there's no way to get our order in fast enough to take that. So just how it is sometimes. Counter channel setup at 11:21, and we would use the close of the previous day as our target area. And then it's lunchtime, so I'm going to quickly just scroll through all the lunchtime stuff. And here we are. Actually, on Thursday we had the FOMC minutes at 2 o'clock, so we didn't come back until 1:50 into the room instead of 1:30 because we weren't going to be willing to do anything until after 2 o'clock anyway. So we do get a 3 Amigo here just prior to us coming back at just about 1:50, but I wouldn't be interested in that with the minutes coming out at 2 o'clock. So it definitely was the right choice if anybody was trading prior to the minutes to pass on it. Here we get a setup at 2:39. The white is a 3 Amigo, and I opted to pass on it because of, I'm going to just scrunch this up a little bit so you can see. I opted to pass on it because of this area of resistance which had held and 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 held. So I opted to pass on that because it had held so many times. It did go on to work out. If you didn't take the Amigo, we did get a counter channel setup right after at 2:40, and we did get a tick extreme. And I'm not going to go much into tick extremes and how we use them. Maybe the next video or during the next webinar I will. But if you use the tick, and it's $ TICK is the symbol, and you need a separate feed for that. And even though we're trading the NQ and the tick is based on the New York Stock Exchange, all the markets are generally doing similar things. So it's still relevant to us even though we're trading the NQ. And that's the only internal that I use. But anyway, if you use the tick, after it retraces, if the setup is still valid, you take it. Okay? So that's at 2:40. Then we do get 3 Amigo at 3:15. Again, we get a tick extreme on that. And again, if the tick has retraced and the setup is still valid, then we take it. So I hope that helps. And if you have any questions, send me an email, or if you want more information on the setups, go to www.easyemintrade.com. And I'm likely going to do a webinar probably, I'm thinking maybe the 25th or November 1st. So I'll keep you guys posted. And I'll try to do one of these videos each week, kind of recapping you know, the things that we did in the room each week. Okay, so have a great afternoon.